ask the question that's on everybody's mind. When are we going to see the new Indian motorcycle?
Later this year. So
is that good enough for everybody?
That's really good.
Later this year?
That's really good. That gives me till about 12:31. That's so no, we're feverishly working on making outstanding Indian motorcycles, and we do see a late summer to late fall opportunity to launch those bikes to the public.
And I think, and maybe this is a question for Gary, but one thing to talk about is like the relatively compressed time frame we've been dealing, in taking over the Kings Mountain operation, and because people think that you could just invent a motorcycle and 2 weeks later it's coming out of but it takes more than that.
No, I mean, if you look at the industry as a whole, motorcycles take probably 3 to 5 years to develop and validate to make sure that you get the bike that you want, something that gives you confidence, something that's very premium, something that's, for us, based on our rich heritage. We're going to do it faster than that. We absolutely positively have to do it faster than that. And that's why we're intentionally being a bit vague on the production date, because we are pushing so hard. The team is working really hard. You can go hear the new engine over in our booth. You can download our Indian Rides app. So, I mean, we're working our tails off, we're working fast. That's why we have to be a little bit vague about what we're doing and when that's going to come out.
So in keeping with you two guys at the design and engineering end of the line over there, are you guys talking about an all-new motorcycle? Are we talking about a redesign of something that's already existing, something that's getting reinvented? What?
Yeah, it's ground up. And we started with a white sheet of paper and a lot of great ideas. And honestly, we did a lot of research before we even started. Each of the engineers and the designers has a stack of motorcycle books about that high that we've read on the Indian brand and our heritage. We went out and rode Indian motorcycles from the 1920s and 30s and kind of soaked in what an inline 4 feels like versus what a V-twin Chief feels like versus a 101 Scout. So got really good feel for the brand, and it's an amazing opportunity and experience. I don't know if you want to add to that, Mike, or
you pretty much covered it.
Mike says I got it.
You got it. You nailed it. All right, you're done. Mike, you're doing great. Thanks. So moving on to the next question here. How long has Indian motorcycles been of like an interest to Polaris Industries?
Sure, Polaris has always been interested in opportunities to grow our business, particularly in motorcycles. We looked at Indian early on in 2000 and looked for the opportunity there. Couldn't come to a deal, so we finally were able to come to a deal in April of 2011. That's when we officially purchased Indian and became a business under the Polaris family.
And kind of a question for both of you guys in the middle, but maybe I'll start with Gary. What do you see as the kind of future of American motorcycles and kind of American motorcycle product design? So I'll pause here because Gary's like the professional guy trained to do that, has been doing that for a long time with Victory, and Mike is he's got some big ideas, right? So let's see where these two match up. This will be great. Go ahead, Gary.
All right, so I mean, for us it's really cool because we think we can offer a choice in what Americans can shop for in a V-twin. I mean, when you go back in history, there's just not a lot of heritage around motorcycling in the U.S. A lot of it's out of Europe, a lot of it's out of Japan, and I think it's just a really interesting time for us to be able to build something from the ground up in America. I mean, we're building a brand new assembly line for Indian in Spirit Lake, Iowa. We're designing these bikes in Wyoming, Minnesota. I mean, watch the news, right? Do you see a lot of companies starting ground up in America, designing a product for Americans? It's just a really cool opportunity for us. So I'm hopeful. I mean, if we can do it, and Harley-Davidson, obviously, tremendous amount of respect for them. They've been doing it a long time. Victory's now 15 years old. I mean, there's just more and more choice for Americans in motorcycling. So I'm excited. I think it's only going to get better.
For me, what's always attracted me about the brand is, I'm in the history business. I was in the history business way before the History Channel. What you guys see me do on television is something I've done for 25 years now, so Indian has always been a major part of that. I've collected Indians for 25 years, and there's like 3 stages of like snapshots in my life that I can remember. actually 4. Now I just had a daughter, so the birth of my daughter's 1. I can remember when I was must have been in like 8th grade, there was a guy, he was a senior in high school, and he was on a Honda 900, a brand new bike, and he lit that thing up like you would not believe. And I've never seen a bike grab the road like that before. I remember that, and then I remember my first bike, which was a Kawasaki 100. I was 13 years old. I traded a pair of stereo speakers for it. And I, you know, like everybody else, probably half the people in the audience didn't tell their mom that they owned a motorcycle. You know, kept it at another guy's place. And then the fourth one is seeing an Indian for the first time, seeing an Indian chief, studying the front end. I remember it was black, and you know, obviously the first thing that grabs you are the fenders, you know, that came out in 1940. And when you look at something like that, and you know, unless you're a real enthusiast, you always look at motorcycles as a piece of art. You know, all of us here, we look at our motorcycles as art. The lines, the way it flows. You know, you have an emotional connection before you even get on it. That's the kind of connection I had that day. So I did what they call the Johnny Cash special. You know, I looked for a front end, I looked for a frame, I looked for a top end, I looked for an engine, and finally I was piecing this bike together. And that was my first bike, and I've had a number of Indians ever since. So for me, I've always liked more the early part of the company, as far as like the origin of it, the creation of it, with Hendy and Headstrom, and you know, even through the DuPont years. So I appreciate the history of it. And if you love motorcycles, if you truly love them, you know, it's so easy to love the Indian story. I mean, it's epic. And so throughout my adult life, I've kept a lot of Indians, and I've always surrounded myself with them. So when these guys bought the bike at the show, we started having conversations, and they saw my passion, and I saw their passion. I traveled to Minnesota, met with the team, and saw that they were really interested in the history of the company, which is important, but they were really interested in how can we take that and push it forward through the different technology, with still holding on to what this is. Because with all of us, like I said earlier, Indian is a lifestyle. For 112 years, people have lived with this brand. You know, I travel the country and people are like, my grandfather had an Indian, my father had an Indian. I can remember when my grandfather came back from World War II and he had an Indian. There's a relationship there. And so for me to have a relationship now with these guys is epic, because it's an honor. And what we're doing right now is we're creating history. We really are. This is the first sound of the motor, you getting an idea of what's going to happen with the company, me being completely in the dark with you. I tried to get him to at least sketch the motor out for me last night on a cocktail napkin. I mean, I've never seen anything. I'm excited about seeing anything at all. So they're keeping it back, but they're making sure it's right, like he said. So it's a journey that we're all going to travel on this year together until the boss man says we can see it.
So, I mean, that sets up a really great segue to what Mike Song does in the Industrial Design Department. A history and heritage of Indian motorcycles stylistically is pretty important. Can you talk a little bit about how that might play into maybe the next bike we're going to see, but ultimately like motorcycles down the road, and sort of your vision on that?
Sure. You know, I'm actually really excited about the American motorcycle in general, and actually the evolution. You know, I think if you look back at Indians' earlier bikes, you know, from the teens to 20s and 30s, you know, Indians kind of done it all. You know, with inline fours, longitudinal twins. So I mean, it's a quite a mix there. So a lot of varieties and a lot of choices, as Gary mentioned. So, you know, I think, you know, seeing that kind of a heritage and the legacy that an Indian left behind, I think it really allows us to kind of open our mind and kind of explore new things and new possibilities that we've kind of ignored in the past. So, you know, with Indian coming aboard, I think it's really going to help to accelerate the evolution of American motorcycle design.
So, Gary, who do you guys see as the Indian customer now, and how could that sort of change in the future, given what Mike just talked about?
Yeah, I mean, the Indian consumer is extremely passionate. I mean, it's a brand that's frankly been a bit tortured, but people still believe in it and still stand behind it. So first and foremost, they're really passionate about the brand. They're passionate about it being American made. They're passionate about its heritage, and they want to see the brand done right. And so that's our job to definitely not let them down.
Yeah, so I think that's the position that Polaris is in, and finally have opportunity to do it right. And speaking of doing it right, how many of you guys go down to Daytona Beach for Bike Week? Yeah, show of hands. Got a few guys there over here. Marjorie, I know you're going to be down there, right? I'll loan you a bike at some point, I swear, right? Steve, will you tell us a little bit about some plans for Daytona? Maybe, let some of our East Coast friends here know what's going to happen down the other end of 95.
Sure. Down in Daytona, we have a pretty robust plan. We'll actually have 4 locations down in Daytona at the Speedway. We'll be on Main Street. We'll be up in Destination Daytona as well, making sure that we're showing off not only our heritage bikes, but also we're going to be introducing the actual and presenting the actual engine. So we're holding Mike off just a little bit longer, but we're gonna be actually showing the public the engine, and we're gonna bring it out in a different way, which is gonna be pretty cool, and have an opportunity to kind of take where's Indian going and marry that with a little bit of our heritage and our history. So a little bit of where the future on our engine's going, a little bit of history.
Gary, over to you on when it comes to the engine, right? I've had customers walking up and go like, "Oh, you just need to make the Chief engine from 1938. Just make that again. Just do that and bring that back." Now the reality of that sort of thing, right? But Gary, tell us, what is it? Why can't we do that? That sounds like a dumb question, but there's real answers there. But why can't we do that? And what is a modern engine supposed to do?
I mean, the old Chief engines were amazing for their time, but times have changed so much, right? You don't see a lot of people that rode here today kick-starting bikes, so that would probably be the first challenge. A lot of people don't know how to adjust their ignition before they start a bike, shut the fuel off every time. I mean, bikes were amazing for their time, but times have moved on. So obviously, we're gonna tie the new engine to our heritage as much as we possibly can. But we're going to modernize it, we're going to make it better, we're going to make it more reliable, easier to run, more fuel efficient. It's got to pass a lot of new regulations that frankly didn't exist back then. So for us, it's all about our heritage, about making things premium and giving consumers confidence.
When we're talking about the engine, isn't it all about horsepower? Are you guys in it?
Horsepower is important. I mean, to a cruiser rider, torque is probably a little more important. I mean, people they want to whack the throttle in any gear and have tons of confidence, and I'll guarantee you when this baby comes out, you'll have tons of confidence.
So between you two guys on the design and engineering side, Mike Song, maybe you can, in doing the research and the history, a lot of people understand Indian is the chief, right? That's the modern history has been the chief, but it's kind of projecting ahead a little bit more. What other categories of motorcycles could an Indian possibly be in your mind?
I think it's really endless. I mean, like I mentioned, the past Indian models. I mean, there were so many variations of motor, and really motor is kind of the key to other motorcycle segments. So by having that kind of amazing heritage, I think it really opens the door to any and all.
Yeah, great. All right, now I'm going to pass this one on to the chief here because he's had practice talking about this a fair amount. But tell us about the brand relationship between Victory on one side of the Polaris Industries business and Indian on the other side. How do the two brands sort of fit? When you say American motorcycle, that's a big umbrella, but there's actually room for more than one out there.
Sure, there is. It always starts. Each brand starts with the customers. What customers are you servicing with each brand? When you look at Indian, it's that American-made, that classic American styling, that performance, that technology end of the side, as well as the folks that want a little more premium, a little more history into their bikes. Victory serves more of that performance rider and distance rider. If you see in our touring and bagger bikes, more storage, more power in the engine, more capability and so forth, more lean angles on our cruisers and so forth. So we go after that more performance and distance rider. So it starts there, and we think each brand, Victory only being 15 years old, Indian being 112 years old, we're not kidding ourselves, Victory doesn't have the heritage there. But it can create its own heritage and its own edginess to it and modern styling, the smooth flowing lines that it has and so forth. We see both brands being able to do very well in the motorcycle business.
And again, coming out of Polaris Industries, I think a lot of people, particularly if you're only in the motorcycle world, all you know of is on Victory, right? I mean, that's all you know of, and some people don't even know that Polaris, owns Victory, and I mean, we still run into some of that every now and then. So if maybe you could talk a little bit on the business side about the scale of the company that backs both these brands, and then Gary, after that, maybe you could talk a little bit about the engineering and what really happens and what kind of equipment we have in order to really deliver a quality product.
Sure. So Polaris has been in business since 1954, so 58 years. It has global distribution around the world, over 2,000 dealers around the world, manufacturing in the Midwest and outside of the United States, parts, garments, and accessories distribution in both in Europe and in the United States. So we have a pretty good global reach. We understand how to manufacture products, ship them around the world, and satisfy customers. So we have global sourcing on all of our products and so forth, but very profitable company, low debt, great American story. As people have frowned on companies about hiring over the last few years, Polaris has grown from about 3,000 employees to 5,000 employees over the last 3 years, hiring jobs in the United States, in Mid-America, in the Midwest of America. So it's just a great story of Polaris, a lot of growth, and looking to grow continually outside the United States as well as within the United States. We offer products in off-road vehicles, snowmobiles, parts, garments, accessories, motorcycles, military products, work products, so pretty good array of things going on at Polaris.
Yeah, so in terms of equipment that we have to engineer, to test, to validate motorcycles, our research and development facilities in Wyoming, Minnesota, we're actually in process of doubling the size of that facility. It's absolutely jam-packed with engineers right now, and we don't have enough room with everything that we're doing at Polaris, and especially in motorcycles now. So we're doubling the size of that facility, and just a few snippets about what we can do in that facility. So we have an environmental test chamber that we can take a motorcycle from sea level to 10,000 feet in one day. In that same chamber, we can take that motorcycle from -40 Fahrenheit to plus 120 Fahrenheit. So anything that you're going to encounter out on the road, we can replicate in a chamber in our research and development facility. We have salt spray tests that we can replicate a lifetime worth of road salt on a vehicle within a few days. We have ultraviolet testing, so if you park your bike outside, your seat isn't going to fade, your paint isn't going to fade. We have equipment that intentionally damages and destroys bikes. So we've got one piece of equipment that you can put a motorcycle on it, and in 18 days we can put the equivalent of 300,000 miles worth of damage from the road into that bike. And we have another piece of equipment that we can put a motorcycle on, and in 15 hours we can put 300,000 miles worth of engine vibration damage into a product. So we can find the issues that a consumer might have way down the road and fix them before they even know about them. It's pretty amazing.
So in short, if that guy ever asks to borrow your bike, the answer is no. Right, okay. So Mike Wolfe, I mean, understanding somewhat of the capabilities of the company, I mean, you met with us, you got to visit us in Minnesota and stuff like that. Your gut check, do you think we ever have a chance of getting bigger than the guys from Milwaukee?
You want to set your sights higher than that, don't you?
Yeah.
The great thing about what's happening right now is we've all kind of heard this before if you followed the brand. We're remaking Indian, we're doing this with Indian, this is going on with Indian, but this is the first time that a company has owned Indian that can actually do what they say. They've gone to lengths of riding the older bikes and understanding the older bikes, and that's a lot of it. But the rest of it is yet to come. So when we talk about history for Indian, we're talking about the history that we're all going to make together, and that's a pretty powerful thing.
So to jump across to the mic number 2 over here, this is going to be my last question. We'll solicit some from the audience next. Mike, what's your favorite Indian motorcycle?
My favorite Indian is the one I just finished, sitting in our studio.
There you go. All right, so we get that. Do we have any audience questions out there? Show of hands. Yes, sir. Okay, the question is, are we going to make Indian motorcycles more affordable? Who would like to answer that?
Yes, we are going to make Indians more affordable. We're going to, like anything else in a product plan, you're going to have a range of products. So as we come to market, we'll have affordable Indians, and we'll continue to have higher priced Indians as well as the bling goes up on them and the technology goes up and the chrome is more, so forth. There's going to be an opportunity for those customers, but also for the folks who want to experience Indian at affordable price. You will be happy.
That's a pretty good answer, right? Not bad. Any other questions out there? I know you guys aren't shy to ask questions. Sir.
Mike talked about it for a minute, but one-on-one scout, anything in the future along those lines as far as weight class, handling, engine size, affordability?
So the question is, how might the 101 Scout in sort of the history, does that fit maybe someday? I'll let Gary answer that because he's the master at that.
Yeah, I mean, we have a 5-year plan currently of products that we want to introduce. So as we go through this year, I know it's frustrating for everyone right now. You want to see that, but imagine being in my brain and I'm seeing 5 years out. There's a lot of cool bikes in that. I'm not going to say what they are, obviously, for competitive reasons, but I don't really see a lot of classes of bike that Indian can't play in, and we're going to feed off our heritage. So if we made great bikes in the past, that's obviously going to inspire Mike and I to look at those, and I think the possibilities are endless.
We got some other, yes sir. Oh, that's a great question. Okay, talk a little bit about the dealer network and what our projections are there.
Sure. Currently we have around 15 dealers around the country, right? Because we bought the business, and we are out currently recruiting for our dealers, and we hope to make sure that we have enough. We don't go by a dealer count. We want to make sure that we have enough dealers to make sure everybody's satisfied as customers, that you feel confident, you can ride around North America, have places to go to get service, have places to go to retail and so forth. So when you look at New York City, we got a lot of opportunities for new dealers all around the greater metropolitan area here in Jersey, Connecticut, New York City, and so forth. So we're going to be adding dealers considerably fast here over this current year in 2013 and on into 14-15. So we'll also have them around the globe. We're actually working on it, bringing on dealers around the globe right now. So.
And it's not like we're scared of dealers. I mean, we've got how many Polaris dealers, and we've got
there's over 1,700 Polaris dealers right now in North America alone. Victory's over 500. So we have a lot of dealers. We understand the dealer model, and we'll have enough to make sure that Indian remains premium, but also is able to service everybody who buys an Indian for the long haul rides.
All right, so I'm going to fit in 2 more questions. How many more questions we got out there? Any hands? Marjorie, come on, reporter lady. You got nothing? Well, we asked all the good stuff, right? She's waiting for the scout. Okay, other questions on this side? Yes, sir. Okay, so the question is, talk a little bit about your time experiencing the older motorcycles, the heritage motorcycles, and how does that play into future bikes? Did I say that right? Okay.
I don't know. It's a good question.
One of the first things I know that you guys got to do was...
that was the first thing we did. Like I said, we read tons of books to get the experience that way, but that's, you can only do so much by reading a book. You have to get out and experience it. So we spent 2 days down in Iowa riding, and then we drove over to the AMA Motorcycle Museum and took a lot of time taking those in. And then we started buying some old Indians. So up in our design studio where Mike works, there's a 1938 Chief sitting right there. So I mean, anytime you need to get the feel, so to speak, of the old bikes, it's right there. I couldn't tell you how many hours we spent doing that. I don't know if you want to add to that.
Yeah. I know Wolfe is already trying to figure out like when he's going to come pick in the corporate office.
Hey, I've already gone through the trash can when I was there. When he talks about a piece of paper, it starts on a piece of paper. The ones you wadded up.
Okay, well, when we hired him, we bought a lot more shredders. That's the truth. So, last question. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
What's Mike Wolfe's relationship with the company? What is he?
That's a great question, Mike. Talk a little bit about your relationship with the company. You earlier talked about how that started in meeting with Sturgis, but sort of projecting forward, how do you see it fitting with us?
I feel my role with the company is helping people understand the past with the company. I mean, there's a lot of guys like, you know, I'm 48 years old. Obviously, I didn't grow up with Indian. I mean, there were some trail bikes in the 70s that I remembered, but, you know, helping people understand the past. And I think that's what I do best. You know, even on my show, I think with what we do, we're storytellers. And I want to tell the story from the past, obviously, but also that's what I talked about today, how we're all experiencing history right now, and being able to tell this story as it goes on. You know, we talk a lot about the history and the heritage of the company and what we all expect out of it as far as design. And for me, like, it's all about pride. I'm very proud and honored to sit up here with these guys and talk about this brand, because this is it, man. This is the first American motorcycle company that set the bar for everybody, and it's going to continue to do that, and that's what's awesome about it.
All right, guys, put your hands together. Thanks very much, Mike Song, Gary Gray, Mike Wolfe, Steve Menneto. We appreciate you guys coming out. We can't tell you how much we appreciate you paying attention to the Indian motorcycle brand, and to our friends here at the International Motorcycle Show for putting on a great show every year, allowing us to come out here, invade the stage here, and you know, fire up a Streamliner motorcycle over there, and you know, kind of have that fun. So we're going to invite you guys to head on over to the Indian motorcycle display. Mike's going to set up with an autograph table over there, hanging out over there. We got some really cool custom Indian motorcycle autograph cards for you. Thanks again very much to all of our friends out there, and we'll see you guys out on the road, okay?